This information was presented at RESNA 2023. This is a shortened version to lay out what I am proposing to launch and looking for volunteers to help with. So my name is Antoinette Verdone. I am an engineer by trade, and I've been in the industry since 2000. I have my ATP and RET certifications, and I've worked in government, nonprofit, and for-profit businesses. So that just is a little bit of background about me. When I started practicing in 2000, it was kind of a tipping point in the industry where before I joined the industry, a lot of custom work was being done. Assistive technology was focused a lot on seating and mobility, and people were making a lot of custom applications for that. But when I started practicing, there was kind of a explosion of commercially available products. So that need for customization went down pretty quickly. Also, back in that time, there was only a handful of resources and manufacturers of AT. So if you knew those few resources, you really knew all the available assistive technology products in the market. So it was actually pretty easy to know all the things that were available, but it was also a limited list of things. Fast forward 23 years, and really in the AT world, there's very little custom fabrication being done. Are people still custom making things? Of course, but the need and also just the way that the industry has changed, the ability to do custom fabrication really is very minimal. But in those 23 years, personal computing and consumer electronics have kind of risen to the forefront and are an area of assistive technology that didn't exist 23 years ago. So what does this have to do with makers? When you look at where the AT industry has come from, also if you talk about the status of public accommodation, there is really this emerging market for custom-made devices. So when you look at consumer electronics, they're really ubiquitous. Everybody's got a mobile device, a tablet, a computer, and people with disabilities want to use the same stuff that everybody else does. And also, to give credit to the manufacturers, they're putting a lot of accessibility features into devices that are making it possible for that to happen. The cost of making has dramatically decreased. I say I'm almost jealous that I went to engineering school 20 years ago because I didn't get to learn a lot of these things that people are doing now. And it's frustrating to me because I find that I see the potential, and I wish that I knew more so that I could make solutions when I find problems that there isn't a commercial solution for. And then the maker industry, if you're not familiar with the word makers or maker industry, it's a whole area of people that are out there doing all kinds of really cool DIY things. And I feel that we as part of the AT industry should take advantage of these people out there that have these amazing skills and utilize them to serve our clients and the industry needs. Also, the place where we're looking for AT is no longer this handful of resources. So I know I have really taken to Facebook groups, listservs to help crowdsource solutions when I don't know an answer to a problem. For example, Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding platform, if you search assistive technology into Kickstarter, you get 14 projects. And I would say of those projects, some, maybe a handful, are what we would consider assistive technology, but then there's a whole bunch of projects that are out there on Kickstarter and similar platforms that when I see them, I see how they could be applied to help people with disabilities, but they're not listed as assistive technology because makers don't know that term. And then when you look at things like the App Store, crowdfunding, Etsy, it's really impossible to know all the currently available products. So it's really awesome because someone can make a thing that's useful, whether it's assistive technology or not, or whether they made it for that purpose, but it can be used for people with disabilities. But finding those solutions can be challenging. So I know this, I'm being a little generic here, but kind of we've in the AT industry, we've kind of dealt with the big stuff. So, if you need a ramp, if you need a wheelchair, if you need hearing aids, other kind of assistive technology that's been around for a long time, those things are out there. There's multiple options. You can do it many different ways. So I'm not saying that there can't be innovation in those areas, but we've kind of found those solutions. And if you look at the whole landscape of commercial assistive technology, that really fulfills a good chunk of the market, but we still have those edges where we have people who have needs that commercially available products simply do not meet. And this is where makers can really fill the gap to solve those problems for those tiny ends of the curve. But just to be, to be clear, we're talking about a small market of a small market of a small market. So these are products that are not going to be sold on the millions, maybe on the tens if you're lucky, depending on what the project is. So here's a couple examples of how of what makers can do in the assistive technology world. So the first picture is a picture of a commercially available toy, and it has been switch adapted by a maker to allow an ability switch to be plugged in so that someone who can't push the buttons on the product can use it. The next picture is a 3D printed add-on to a game controller that allows someone with one hand to operate it. The next picture is using a Wii controller to operate a computer. And then the last picture is a very small short throw joystick used for gaming. You can see here, this is just kind of one example. So these are some commercial products that have kind of been adapted. Fulfilling the loss function of a discontinued product. AT Makers has an adapter for the IntelliKeys, which was a product that was widely used and available, and there are some people out there that it really is their best and only access method. And I don't know exactly what it was, but a number of years ago, it stopped being compatible with current operating systems. So AT Makers was able to do the research and the development to make an adapter. So now people who it is their best and only access method are able to use it. So if that had not happened, these products would no longer be useful, and those people that it really is their best and only access method would have lost access. An example that I have is we were using the Logitech Harmony Hub for a very specific situation, and Logitech discontinued it. So I needed a solution to fill that gap. Another example is creating a targeted product for a very specific population. So this picture is a client that I worked with who had a number of challenges. She had vision problems, problems with speaking, problems with the ability to move her hands, also proprioception of what she was touching. And so without going into the whole story, the part that I needed that there wasn't a commercial product for was I needed a Morse code keyboard. So I needed something that with two switches, one for dot, one for dash, it could take that input and interpret it into spitting out the letter for the dots and dashes of the Morse code that she was putting in. So that is not commercially available. There are some Morse code solutions out there, but not exactly what I needed in this particular case. So I was able to find someone who made it for me, and it was a perfect solution for her. So you could kind of say we've maybe come full circle in assistive technology in these last 23, 25 years, where there is a market and a need and the ability to make custom solutions for people with disabilities. So you may be saying, okay, this sounds great. How do we find the makers? So that's really not an easy question to answer. I'm on some Facebook groups. There are nonprofits, AT Makers, Makers Making Change, that are doing really awesome work in this space. In different areas of the country, they have what they call maker spaces, where people utilize tools that are shared and they pay a fee typically. So there is that kind of collection of people out there. If you're not familiar with Adafruit, it's a website and resource for the actual products that people use to do maker projects. They have a show and tell, and I've watched a few of them, and it's surprising how often assistive technology comes up in there whether it's on purpose or by accident. Sometimes it's someone's actually making something for a person with a disability, or I've seen a couple projects where when I see those projects, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is assistive technology, but they just don't know of that term. And then I'm sure all of us have just seen kind of random news stories of schools and different organizations that make projects that are assistive technology. So the thing is, there's no clear place for makers and AT to come together. So I would really love there to be a place where AT professionals can get their weird projects done. So, I've been able to find kind of these, people randomly on some level that are able to make these projects for me, but I would really like there to be a more formal way that this happens. I'm not trying to replicate, the nonprofits that are doing their work, that's part of this whole picture. But I really want a place where makers can become part of the AT industry. And if we can educate makers on the needs for people with disabilities, then that's really where the magic happens. So I'm not going to go into these examples, but my point is that when the few makers that I've encountered kind of in the wild, when they learn about the potential and the obstacles for people with disabilities, they light up, and it's a really exciting project for them. And it's a really untapped market for RESNA, which is an area that we could actually bring some people into the organization and make our community even more diverse than it already is. So I interviewed a wide range of professionals, some makers, some AT professionals, kind of seeing, what are the missing pieces here. And I came up with two main needs. One is a resource for makers. So a maker, maybe by accident, again, they find out about the assistive technology industry and they're like, ooh, I want to get into this. We could be a resource for them to help connect. Also, a resource for the different organizations and people out there that are doing this. So kind of a two-edged sword there. And a place for AT professionals to find makers to help them make their products. So again, after I had these interviews, I discussed really looking at commercialization of maker projects. So again, there's some nonprofits and some kind of one-man shows out there that are making things that are useful, and they're either gifting them to clients or just charging them for parts. But I really would love there to be a way to legitimize these projects so that they can really get into the hands of people with disabilities. So, thinking of, those edges of the curve, they may not be that many people, but it's more than one. So if we found a solution that was really useful in a specific situation, there's probably another person who can use that, but finding a way that it can be done thoughtfully and where we have some safety measures in place so that everybody can feel comfortable that this is a robust solution. And to really overcome some of those obstacles of getting their projects into the hands of people with disabilities. So obviously the biggest thing that comes up is liability insurance and some other obstacles there. And I would like for there to be a place where we can connect AT professionals with people who offer these services. So it was interesting. A lot of the makers I spoke with, one of the things multiple people said was that they, went to a conference, they looked at the product, and they saw that they opened it up and they said, oh, that's just $10 in parts. And that may be true, but to put a product out there costs more than $10 in parts. So there's, all kinds of things that go into that. So again, not taking away anything that nonprofits or people out there who are volunteering their time are doing, but what I'm really looking for is a way to have a proper product that's tested and that is supported so that we can implement it for more than just one person with a disability. I'm going to skip that. So these are some of the obstacles I identified. Obviously, liability insurance is kind of, I would say, the biggest one. It can be rather expensive, but if we're offering a product, it should be tested and it should be covered by some sort of liability insurance to protect both sides. Warranty, tech support, again, please don't hear that I'm trying to take away anyone who volunteers their time to help a person. That is a laudable task. But if someone's going to offer a real product that people are going to use, there should be some sort of plan for when it breaks, not if, but when, and to get help if they're having trouble using it. There's a lot of regulatory requirements, and also manufacturing. It may be that someone knows how to make something, but they don't know how to, some people are good at designing, some people are manufacturing, but what if that's not all the same person? So could there be a way where we could share all this information so that can all happen? And something that one maker brought up to me, which I thought was a good insight, was for makers having access to technology for testing. So let's say they're looking at a product that would interface with eye gaze system. Well, a maker doing things in his garage isn't going to have a $15,000 eye gaze system at his disposal. So being able to have access to that, I thought that was really a good insight. Or even the person I was speaking to, he didn't have a current iPad that had the current operating system on it. And so if he's going to develop something that works with an iPad, he would need access to that. And I'm sure anyone listening to this video would come up with many other things. So what I'm proposing is, I'm looking for a way, how can RESNA offer a way to overcome these obstacles? So I feel like RESNA really is in a good position to fill this need by providing a meeting place. RESNA may be able to provide resources and other tools. Again, we're at the beginning stages here. Let's start something and kind of see where it goes. So for people in the AT industry, this could be a path to get your products made. A lot of therapists out there are encountering people that have a problem that there isn't a commercial solution for, and that's just where things stop because they don't know that there's an option out there, because there really isn't a path right now for that to happen. And looking for a place to bring those who would never know about AT into the industry. And another thing that I would like to see is an income source for makers. So if we're going to ask makers to join our industry, we need to find a way that they can make a living doing so. So the call to action is for RESNA to start a special interest group, which is what is happening. And that's what I'm proposing here. And I need people to sign on to volunteer their time to decide what we want this group to be. So these are just a list of some things that this SIG could do. Again, I don't want to go into all this in detail. So if you're interested, if you're a member of RESNA, we need a minimum of 15 members of RESNA to join the SIG to get things started. But also RESNA is allowing makers to join who aren't RESNA members. So if any of this was interesting to you at all, I highly recommend or asking that you would go to www.improvability.com/maker to sign up for information sessions to become part of this new special interest group under RESNA. And when you fill out that form, that will give me your contact information. So once I have enough people that we can start talking, then we'll figure out how we're going to do that. So really at this point, I've kind of given my presentation of what I think this should be, but I am totally open. I want to create a platform, and I want to get everybody at the table and see how we can make something happen here. So here's my contact information if you want to get in touch with me directly, but the best thing to do would be to go to www.improvability.com/maker, fill out that form so that I can have your contact information. And once I have gathered all the people that are interested at this time, we can move forward and start brainstorming on how we can make this happen. So thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. And I'm really excited about this new opportunity to connect assistive technology professionals and makers to provide solutions to people with disabilities.